All right, in today's lesson, we're going to learn about different variables, truncation, and typecasting. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm in my drive. I'm going to go to New, More, Drive Notepad. Oh, and by the way, if you're following this online and you don't have Drive Notepad, to get that, you can just go to Connect More Apps, type in Drive Notepad, hit enter. It should be that top one. You can just connect it to your drive, allow it to be a thing, and authorize it, and you should have the ability to then go to More and then Drive Notepad. All right, so I said we were going to be learning about different variable types. So let's name our class public class, maybe different variables. And I'm going to do public static void main string array args. Okay, so here I'm going to start out by doing what we already know how to do, and that is to declare variables. Oh, and at this point I see that it's not making my comments green, and that's just because I haven't saved it as a .java. So let me come in here, make it different variables.java as the name. I'll hit enter and save, and it should auto detect my language to be Java language. So now it's highlighting, changing the colors nicely. All right, so we've already seen how to declare variables. That just means to, create my variables. And before, we've seen how to make integer type variables in this class. So I can maybe make int a. This is an integer type variable, and it's named a. I can also maybe make int b and int c. Now this is 3 different lines to declare 3 different variables. If I want to instead, I can kind of use a couple less lines by just saying int a, comma, int b, or comma b, comma c. And what this will do is it will declare 3 different variables, all of type int, and my 3 variable names are a, b, and c. All right, so these are ints, which means they are whole numbers. All right, next, our new variable type that we're going to look at today is the type double. And I'll make 2 double variables, one named d and one named e. Double variables are numbers, but instead they are decimal numbers instead of whole numbers. So for example, my ints can only be maybe -1, 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, going on, for a long time there. My decimal numbers could be -1 or 0, but it can also be 1.5 or 2.7 or 3.3. So ints are integer numbers, which means they're only whole numbers. Doubles can hold decimal numbers. So that's one new thing that we've seen. We've got our 2 different variable types we now know. Now the first thing I'm going to look at is, all right, let's start giving these variables some values. Maybe I'll set a equal to 5, b I will set equal to, I don't know, -13. That's enough for my integers. What about my doubles? I'll maybe say d is equal to 2.5. All right. Now, if I print these out, system.out.println, I can say a is, and here I'll truncate my a, or concatenate my a here, and I'll make another line, system.out.println, and d is, and I'll leave a space over here so that when I concatenate, it makes it look kind of nicer. And I'll print out d. Let's just see what this program runs. I should just be printing out a is 5 and d is 2.5. So I'll Control A, Control C to copy this whole thing. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Control A, Control C to copy the whole thing. And I'll come to my compiler at compilejava.net, and I'll hold Control, hit V to paste it in here, and let's compile and execute this program. So it compiled correctly, and it did exactly what I expected. It printed out A is 5, D is 2.5, and I'm happy about that. Everything looks like it's going well, and we're all nice and happy. All right, next, let's try to add my int and double. I want to see what happens there. So first I'll say, okay, what if I say C is equal to A plus D? Well, all this will do is it's going to take the value A and add it to whatever D is holding, and then it'll take that value and stick it in my variable C. Let's do the same thing, but here I will instead set E equal to A plus D. And I want to see what the difference is here. Let's just print out two more. So system.out.println. C is, oh, let me not forget my quotes. C is what? C is, and then plus C, geez. And then system.out.println. E is E. All right, let's Control A, Control C, come here, Control A, Control V, and let's try to compile and execute this. Oh, so we got an error, and it said in different variables.java at line 13, so we're looking at line 13 right over here, it says error, incompatible types, possible lossy conversion from double to int, and it's saying specifically, it's kind of pointed out right here is where it first notices the problem. So on line 13, I'm possibly losing something from converting this variable D, which is of type double, to an integer, to a type int variable. Well, that's because if I do A plus D, 5 plus 2.5, that should work, I guess. But if I put in 7.5, which is, 5 plus 2.5 is 7.5. If I put 7.5 in C, it's going to not be happy because C is only allowed to hold whole numbers. So here we're going to have to do a thing called typecasting. So I'm going to have to typecast. And to typecast, all you do is you just put parentheses and then the name of the variable type that you want to switch that variable to. So D is of type double, and I want to say, hold up, pretend for a moment that you're actually an integer instead. And that's what typecasting is. Now, you can't always typecast every variable type into every other variable type, but you are allowed to typecast a double into an int. So I'm going to Control A, Control C, Control A, Control V. Let's see if it compiles now. All right, so it's successfully compiled, but let's take a look at these two lines right over here. So I added A plus D to get me C, and then A plus D to get me E. Now notice here, on this line, there was no error. Even though I've got an integer plus a double, it didn't complain because it got that 7.5 here. I can add 5 plus 2.5, and it was happy because I was able to then take that value and put it into E, because 7.5 is a double value and E is a double, so that's totally fine. All right. But here it says, all right, I did the typecast. That doesn't get rid of that. That gets rid of that compilation error. But then when I look over here, well, of course, if I made D into an int, I'm going to get an integer answer. So when I did A plus D, I had 5 plus 2.5, but that typecast looks like it switched it from 2.5 to just 2, because 5 plus 2 gets me 7. And here E, it still just has 5 plus 2.5, that gets me 7.5. Everything good there. So what's happening here, or really it's actually happening here again on line 13, I've got that typecast. I've also got something that's called truncate. So when you take a double type and you typecast it into an int, it truncates the value. To truncate a value just means to cut off the decimal value of a number, So whenever I typecast a double into an integer, it truncates that value and it goes from whatever it was, it's just going to look at the whole value part of it. So it just looks at 2. So even if I said maybe this variable d is 2.9, it doesn't round, it does nothing like that. It just truncates, it just chops off the decimal value of that number. So if I compile and execute, here, when I print out C, it's still just 7, and E, it's 7.9. You can see it's not going to say, oh, 2.9 is almost 3, so then I'll do 3 plus 5 and get 8. It just truncates, which just chops off the value of your variable. All right, so that is it for this little lesson on different variable types. We saw a double variable type. We saw typecasting, where you force a variable to be a particular type. And we saw truncating, which if I go from a double, which can hold decimals, to something that can't hold all these different types of numbers in it, like an int, it just cuts off that extra part. Like here I had 2.9. When I typecast it, it truncates it, and it just sees it as 2.